honored to welcome LaTreice Branson.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you to Diane for your words this morning, and to Nature Forward for having me. Before we begin, I just want to start with some gratitude. I am thankful today that this sun is shining through this window. I am grateful for my eyes, my ears, my hands, and my feet. I'm grateful that these legs that I once thought were bad are so good to me. I am grateful for every tree that helps to move this air through my lungs, for every blade of grass, for every flower that I can look at and remember that it's good. I'm grateful for every rock that has been strong enough to hold all of my weight. I'm so grateful for nature because she's been so good to me. My name is LaTreice, and I'm the founder of RAW, Radical Adventures in Wellness. And I'm becoming well in a sick body. And what that means is that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be well in this body that I've been given, in this mind that I've been given, and with this heart and this soul. When I learned of the theme for this conference, belonging, engaged, and empowered, I had to sit with those words and place them in an order. And before I could know where I belong, before I could even get engaged, first I had to be empowered and to put myself in a process of self-discovery that was rooted in compassion and that informed my self-care. And I could begin in so many places, but I'm going to begin in the time of my life where I thought I was at my prime. At the time of my life where I was sure of where I belong, racking up degrees and accolades and awards, my prime. I thought physically I was in my prime. Many of us can look back to a point in our late teens and in our 20s where we knew we felt at our prime. And I thought I was successful. I felt successful on paper, but privately, I did not like myself. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like my memories, my memory associations. And I was embarrassed by my trauma points. So was I really at a prime? Once I had to ask myself those questions, I had to re-examine it. I had to re-examine if during this period in life, where all these things were going good for me, was I well? Was I sleeping well? Was I nurturing my mind well? Was I kind to myself with my words? Was I gentle with myself? Was I sincere in the pursuit of my passions? What I was working for, was it really for others or was it for me? Was I doing it for the praise or really for the love? And when I had to deal with those questions, it set me down for a while. Because I wasn't working in the pursuit of my well-being. I was definitely working in the pursuit of things. And I had it all backwards. And I found myself at this place in my life and in my career where I was driving to work looking for the perfect tree to run my car into. I was not going to work because I was excited, because I was energized. As some of us would say, I was faking the funk. Because every day on that drive, and I had to drive through big, beautiful trees, the trees that I now hug and am so grateful for. And when one falls, I lay my body on it in gratitude that it fell for me to enjoy until it becomes a mushroom. But what got me to that? What got me to this place where in the pursuit of everything I was working for, I was sick and tired. Well, by that time I was on 4 different psychotropic medications to calibrate me, to align me, to help me work through my emotions. And I had to sit with that and go back to when was I first medicated? for who I am. I've been in several car accidents, and before those car accidents, I've always had pain in my body. As a young girl, I remember playing basketball in middle school. And after playing, it seemed like everyone else was okay. People could continue playing, but I couldn't. It hurt. I was always wearing ace bandages on my knees and ankles, and I didn't understand why they could sprain so easily. Somehow I felt I needed to stop, but you know, when you're an athlete, you wrap it up and you keep going. And these accidents, these car accidents, each time I was hit, other than the first, and I hit someone else, I rear-ended them so hard that the lenses came out of my frames, and I thought I was going blind. The next car accident, I got hit. And then while repairing my body from that, I had a fall on ice on my way to my job. So I was dealing with a lot of pain, so much pain that most of it I tried to make okay. And I made it okay by self-medicating. After a long day of work, doing the thing that I loved, I come home at night and I pour myself medication. And I drink that self-medication so that I don't have to feel. And we're in a society now where there's always going to be something to help us not feel. I was falling asleep at night and still not experiencing rest. And eventually, while on all of these medications, I knew that some of it started in a physical pain, some of it was an emotional pain. I didn't figure out the emotional part till later. LaTreice had to teach me about that one. But this physical pain was the first time that a doctor came in while I was crying because my legs were not working. And I'm a big woman, I'm about 6'3". I'm a big girl. And to sit with my legs not working, I asked God, why would you make me this tall just to sit in a wheelchair? Why? Why would you give me all of this talent, all of these gifts to feel like this? So of course I cried every day. The doctors could not console me. So they brought in a new doctor, a psychiatrist, to take a look at me, have a talk with me. And they said they would have something to help me with my clear depression. And I'm not going to deny it. I was at my wit's end, completely confused. And that sparked my relationship with psych meds. And in order to keep this prescription, I had to then go to a therapist and talk about these things, which for me just felt like regurgitating my past to a stranger in hopes that this stranger would help make better sense of it for me. And that was frustrating, very frustrating. And I'm doing it while on medications that are designed to suppress. But I believed in the system. I was working the system and the system was working me. Every time that I would have a manic episode, now I needed to be calibrated again, more medication. And before I know it, I was visiting so many psych wards that I thought it would just be my life. I thought it would just be my life. And you know, I'm not the only one. Many of us have traumas that have led us into spaces that we felt we didn't belong. But I knew I was there for a reason. I was there to learn something about myself. I had to keep going until I chose differently. I remember the last manic episode that I had and got 302 myself. And they came with the van to come pick me up. And by the time I arrived, I decided that I did not belong there. And we're talking today about belonging, where we belong. And I knew I did not belong in a psychiatric facility. I did not this time. I had some emotions and they were complex and I needed to work through them. And I wanted to find those tools. I didn't have them anywhere else in life. So I went to the trees. I told my parents I was going to flush all my medication. And that's something that I was taught not to do. The system of psychiatric care had scared me out of this. You don't do that. You could become uncalibrated and anything could happen. And things did. And I still went to those woods because I remembered that as a child, I was self-soothing with nature. The first time that I remember self-soothing with nature was after my sleep was disturbed. As a child, about 7 or 8, and I only know the age because my drawings changed, because the little cartoons that I was drawing began to have a tear out of one eye. It's nothing like when your rest gets disturbed as a child. And so to make sure that that rest was never disturbed again, I would sit up at night, protecting myself, protecting my energy, protecting my rest. And I would comfort myself by watching the moon and the stars pass. And when they would pass too far to where I couldn't see it from a bedroom window, I would go to the living room. And if I couldn't still see it there, I would go to the top floor of my grandparents' house, where all the windows wrapped around, and I would watch from there, sometimes until that sun came back up. And my mother tells me this story about how radical I was even younger than that to get to nature. She tells me this story of being in diapers, And my mother woke up from a nap, and my sister and I were gone. But our clothes were still in the driveway because I had decided that I wanted to go to the park in my diaper, and it was too hot. I wanted to be free. But it's interesting. I knew how to get there. I trusted myself to get there. And it's my sister. She trusted that we would get there. My parents found us there at the park, getting our radical wellness on. So when I remembered these moments as a child, I had to go back to that knowing, to that peace that I had found in those wee hours of those nights, even as a child. And by the time I got to the trail, I was frustrated. I was angry. I was upset. I was confused. I was a mess. I wasn't smiling at the trees and hugging them at first. I was there to throw rocks at the water and not to make them skip. I was there because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know where else to belong. See, after driving to work, looking for those trees, eventually it led to a panic attack at the job. And after that panic attack, I had to go see the state psychiatrist because I was a part of a state institution. And I was a year out of my tenure. And it was required that I stay on all these medications or else I would be deemed unfit. But I couldn't drive, I couldn't think, I couldn't focus. I would call my mother and tell her, Mom, I was asleep at a red light and I don't even know for how long. But even then, God was watching over me. I was mourning my career. When you place all of your effort into something that is external and that thing does not work out, there's a mourning process that can begin to happen inside of us where we miss who we were. We miss the recognition. We can miss the title. And in all of that, what we're missing is where God is. Where God is in the midst of all of this. And because I could not see God clearly, I had to go to where everything is that God made. Where everything is that God made. I had to rest under those trees and by the water and let myself be baptized and renewed on a daily. And when I couldn't get to the river, I would record it and listen to it. When I can't see the flowers, I would take photos of them to keep. And then my body started to hurt differently again. I started having these pains here in my neck and chest, so I couldn't raise my arm to hold a camera. I could not self-soothe by looking at these things later. It had to become a part of me. It had to get in me. And that brought me to this method that I now know, a method that I had to learn through rest. And before I knew what rest was, first I had to understand what pain was, because pain is what was keeping me from my rest. And I learned that my body and my mind were experiencing two signals from pain, and most of my medication was suppressing it. For my physical pain, taking painkillers, nerve blockers, muscle relaxers did not allow me to feel this body. So I kept getting injured. And see, I'm gonna tell you what's going on. I have now from these accidents, bulging and herniated disc in my body, my neck, my spine, all the way to the base of my ears, down to my tailbone. It creates sciatica, which lets these nerves fire off in my legs and my feet, and it can be quite disruptive. The spasms in my chest could feel like I'm getting shocked with lightning. But what is it trying to teach me? What is it trying to teach me? It's teaching me that something needs to rest or something needs to move. And you may ask yourself, how do you know which is which? You don't know until you work the raw method. So what's the raw method? What is raw? And yeah, it stands for Radical Adventures in Wellness, but really, what is it to live a raw method? Raw is a compassionate self-assessment practice. That's all it is. A compassionate self-assessment practice. I had to assess myself, my life, what I was doing, how I was doing it, how I was working, how I was exercising, how I'm eating, what I put into my body, into my mind. All those things need to be assessed. And after that assessment, there's work to do. And that work is a work that only I can know. And there's work that we do. We go to a job, but the work of this life, the work of being human, that's an internal work. It's an internal knowing. And you don't get to any of that without rest. And so I've learned raw to also be these 3 steps of the method, rest being number 1. There's no restoration without rest. There's no peace without rest. No understanding can truly come without rest. How can we know who we are without rest? How we feel, what's bothering us, what's concerning us, what we want to remedy and fix without rest. And society doesn't want us to prioritize this because there's things to do. There's goals, there's achievements, there's schedules. But without rest, all of that will feel like chaos. The second thing we have to do is assess, self-assess, and not to be very critical in that self-assessment, but just to be honest, to be gentle and compassionate. Today, I had to, after my rest, assess so that I could be prepared for you today. It meant that I had to do the exercises to allow myself to release stress and tension from my chest, my neck, my body, my back. I had to self-massage. And that's tough. It's tough to have to take your fist to the back of you and pound yourself, to pound yourself loose, to reset yourself. And I would love for someone else to do it. But in this walk, some things you got to do for yourself. You have to know for yourself. Who else can know? I have gone to so many doctors. They have looked at me, put me under machines, put me in physical therapies, and I kept getting injured. because none of their job is to assess what I need in the way that I can. Yes, they can tell me what the images say. Yes, they can tell me what my blood work looks like, but I have to assess that information and make decisions for myself. If the doctor tells us that we're overweight, which I am, again, this is becoming well in a sick body. According to doctors, I'm also obese. But what is my assessment about that? My assessment is to become well in this body, to be accountable for what I put into it. And when I looked at it, I realized that there's some things that I could do better. And no, I don't have a weight loss goal. I have a wellness goal. I don't want to lose weight and then risk gaining it back because I didn't learn what the weight was trying to teach me, because I never learned what the weight was that I was carrying, because it's not all just LBs. Some of the weight that we're carrying is other people. Some of the weight that we're carrying is thinking that we need to do more than we actually need to do. Some of the weight that we're carrying is because we're just not giving it to the trees. And so once I give myself a compassionate assessment, I decide on what I need. And then, number 3, I go to work. And as a disabled woman, work looks differently for me. Sometimes work just means getting my body and my mind strong enough to get into my car, drive 7 minutes to my favorite trail. Some days that is all the work. Sometimes the work is stretching and strengthening my arms, my neck, and my back so I can make breakfast. Sometimes the work is just being more compassionate to myself, my own experience, so that I'm constantly giving love. The deeper that I got into this method, rest, assess, and work, I had to understand how to rest. And I now know there to be several types of rest. There's an unconscious rest that we have while we're asleep. Although for some of us, our body is not resting. If you have neuropathy like me, you can feel like your body isn't allowing you to rest when you want to. And so it really takes a conscious effort to even welcome the body into an unconscious state. Then there's the conscious rest. There's the rest that you can have while sitting on the bus on your way to work. It's the rest that happens while our eyes are awake. We're listening, we're looking, we're seeing, we're feeling. But we can be at rest. We can settle our energy and be at rest in the midst of chaos. And those conscious rests also have different elements. You can be in a conscious rest physically, to sit, to lay yourself still. Some may say to meditate. But then there's also a spiritual rest that doesn't necessarily mean that you're sitting still or at all. You can definitely be on the move, but taking a spiritual rest, just taking a pause from something else that's not adding to your spiritual space. And when I hike, when I'm in the woods, it's a state of conscious rest for me. And yes, it is tough and it hurts. When I first went out on those trails, like I told you, I was upset because I didn't wait till the braces were off of my body to go. I didn't wait till I felt better to go. I didn't wait until I was calibrated off the medicine to go. I still went out there feeling a mess and crazy and housed with pain. Back braces on, knee braces on. But I kept going. I couldn't stop going because there was a rest for me there, a restoration process that was happening. And I was so busy before that I didn't see it. I didn't make time for it. I didn't make the time that it deserved. I mean, I would go on a hike for the fun, but I didn't go on a hike to heal, to restore myself, to get to know God. And when I went there, I realized that there wasn't anything for me to rush, because this is not a system, it's a method, and there's no immediate gratification in this. The first time you go to nature, it might be cute, but it's not the time of your life. The first time that you don't know where the trail goes, you learn something new about yourself. But when you keep going back, you notice your favorite tree. You notice some trees leave their roots hanging out because that's the way that they find their balance so they can get connected, sending signals to one another. You learn what frogs leap in a certain way. You get to know the sound of chipmunks rustling in leaves. You get to know where the water is because you hear it before you see it. You get to know the sound of a woodpecker's percussion. You get to see the great heron rise up with its hollow bones and be quiet. But that's what you get when you keep going. You learn that nature never rushes a thing and gets everything done. You learn that nature is perfect without trying too much. Once I understood these things, I started to feel empowered because I empowered my no to liberate my yes. And those no's were tough. The no's that we have to give in order to liberate a yes to ourselves are going to be to people we love, things that we care about. I cared about the work that I was doing, but I had to say no. Even after I got back into the community and we were doing drum workshops and drumming in front of tens of thousands of people, I had to say no to it because I knew that I was not well in that work. I knew that at the same time while I was empowering others, I was on stages with my eyes still blackened behind makeup from panic attacks the night before. And I just wanted to be well. And so I engaged others in my healing process. It wasn't about the shows. It was about restoration. It was about being vulnerable in this, saying that it hurt, welcoming others to say that they hurt and that they don't know what to do. Welcoming others into the secret place, the sacred space amongst the trees and the birds so that they could become well. It is nothing for me to teach there. Nature does the teaching, the trees do the teaching. I'm just there to welcome people into that presence when they're tired and worn, restless. And now I get to say yes. Because of this method, I get to say yes now. I get to say yes to taking nature forward. I get to say yes to taking nature Black. I get to say yes to radical adventures and wellness, welcoming so many people into the sanctuary. There's a discussion going on in the chats about the Black church, and I'm a preacher's child, but it took me going under the sun to learn about God's rest. I had been taught about the work, not the rest. But every time that God used someone in scripture, first, they were alone. They had to rest, then do the work. And so this is the method that I've come to know. And some of us have been afraid of the woods, definitely to go alone. And there are reasons for that. The trauma that has plagued so many of us as a result of the transatlantic slave trade has made some of us afraid of water because of the stories and movies that showed us being tossed off boats and drowned. So we haven't learned to swim. Some of us are not going into the woods and under the trees because once our bodies hung from those trees as we were lynched. Some of us do not feel safe when we see dogs on trails because there's a memory that once we were chased by them. And the trees and through the woods and into the water. But I welcome you into this. We've always known the land. We've always survived on this land. We've always known how to be fed at the land, how to follow moon and stars. We've always known. Once I took a group of therapists on a radical adventure in their wellness. And I asked one of the participants to lead the trail. She was very quiet and timid. She said, I don't know where to go, but where do I know where to go? And I reminded her, your childhood self would know exactly where to go. If all of us were to go outside right now and just run like we were 5-year-olds, we'd all run and run into any direction that just called us, we'd know where to go. Raw is about getting in touch with that childhood self, being compassionate to her. In the woods, I found my little LaTreice, that little girl whose rest was disturbed. I found her while looking for love, after heartache, wanting to know who would love me, care for me, this woman in this painful body and disturbed mind. And little LaTreice came to me one day in the woods, and she said, no one else can do that. No one else can love you like this. No one else can consider the details of your needs like you can. Little LaTreice reminded me of how creative she's always been in the pursuit of her well-being. Little LaTreice was at a school where during Black History Month, you had to select someone to represent for Black History Month, and little LaTreice chose Harriet Tubman. And she knew she couldn't do it alone. So she asked her mom and her dad and her sisters to come to the school so she could lead them to freedom. Little LaTreice knew that she was struggling in school to study and that her mind didn't always catch all the details. So little LaTreice went to the teachers and she said, I know I'm not testing well in Spanish, but what if I bring my drums? I'll drum for every class. And even then she knew she couldn't do it alone. So she called her mother and her sisters to help. Little LaTreice always knew what to do. She always figured it out. And it was radical. Little LaTreice was the same girl in graduate school that when she had to defend her thesis, she was scared and she was having panic attacks. So little LaTreice decided to dress up like an older Black woman to defend her thesis because who was going to disagree with that? Little LaTreice has always known. And so in this work, I do it for her. Anytime little LaTreice is not well, everything has to stop. Anytime she's not safe, I must go. I have to protect her and love her. And she finds that love amongst the trees. So I'm seeking this renewal daily. Every day, I have to start with that rest and assess. How do I feel? Am I okay? What do I need? What does my body need? What does my mind need? What does my spirit need to be well? And I don't want to do anything else with this life, but welcome others into that knowing. A knowing that only nature can give. Because that is our greatest connector while here on this planet. Every living, breathing thing is important. From people to animals, plants, flowers, down to the herbs that I need and ancestral medicine to keep this body strong. So now when I go to see my doctors, I actually get excited because I don't receive the charts as bad news. I know that's just what I need to work on. And I get excited about having something new to work on. Because I'll never forget the first time that my pain met my progress. The first time pain met progress. And this happens in the raw method. When you're doing it right, you're in the method, you're feeling good, you're feeling restored. And then some kind of pain starts meeting up with that progress. When I did not like myself because I blamed what was happening with my health on my legs, I didn't know at the time it was my back. I gave myself permission to beat them. I would beat my legs and I said that they were bad, and I beat them because I said they were bad. Words of power. So I gave myself permission to become my own abuser. And then once I started loving myself better, caring for myself better, being more compassionate to myself, I started working on these legs because I said I wanted to have the best legs ever because I need them. I need these legs because when my nerves fall into a place where I can certainly feel like I'm fainting from the waist down, I needed to build enough muscle to catch me. So I'm building this muscle. I'm building this muscle. And one day the muscle that I was building met the muscle that had been bruised for years. And I felt it. I felt that pain, and I had to remember the method. What is this pain trying to teach me? It was teaching me that this was a pain that I needed to move through. I wasn't going to rest through that pain. I was going to move through that pain. So I breathed in my nose, out my mouth, and I pressed that leg. And I rejoiced. I gave myself a badge for my micro victory that my pain met my progress and passed the test. I got through it. And that is happening every day. Every day. And I'm doing it with compassion because every day is going to be different. Every hike is going to be different. Each one is going to challenge my body. When you have bursitis and things like I have in the hips, walking just on pavement outside, our body is doing the same thing and it doesn't feel good. And when I went out into nature, nature showed me that here, your body's never going to do the same thing. Here, every rock is different. Here, you must be attentive to yourself. You must be in a state of rest because one little pebble will not just twist my ankle, but can severely alter my spine. And to get to a doctor to fix it, the doctors, for me, that would be plural, to put my pelvis back into place, to adjust my spine, to correct where my neck placement is, where my collarbones feel like they've protruded out because of one rock. No, I had to learn that too, and the trees taught me how to rest with my body, to lay it down, assess before I do that work on my body, to learn what needs to be massaged, to learn how to stretch, to learn how to strengthen, to learn how to do isolations with this body, because nature is never doing the same thing the same way. So every day I do something differently with this body. Every day I'm trying to do something differently with this mind. And so how can you live a raw life? Put some love on it. When you feel fear, put some love on it. Be compassionate to yourself. When you have anxiety, put some love on it. When you have pain, put some love on it. Because nature is God's greatest example of compassion. These trees are being chopped every day, but they're still trying to give to us. To make our lawns perfect, we cut the grass, yet it still grows. That sun still shines. And even when the clouds are in front of it, we say, there's no sun out today. The sun's like, yes, I am. I'm always here. By the time I was on all those medications, I was vitamin D deficient. And I decided I did not want to take one more pill because vitamin D was up there. So speak life over yourself. Go to where God is, amongst the trees, the rivers, the rocks, and the flowers. Learn from pain, whether it's sending you a signal to rest or to move. And work that method, that self-assessment practice of rest, assess, and work. Thank you all so much for welcoming me to share about the raw method. I'll turn it back over to you, Vince.
LaTreice, that was, part of me is speechless because that was beautiful and powerful. but part of me also always has a million questions. And if you don't mind, I would like to ask you a couple questions.
Yes.
And the first is with when you introduce the raw method to people and you start to see the light bulb go on, how does that make you feel in terms of the difference you're making in their life?
I feel excited. I feel excited when people find themselves in those woods. And I feel free because my work is just to get them there, to welcome them into that knowing. But once someone gets it for themselves, because of my health, I can't even take people out more than one time for many people. So we have to spend a very serious and intentional time. It's not like going to your therapist for 45 minutes and then, getting your homework. Sometimes we're out there for hours. We're out there till you get a release. And I make myself available for that. So I feel supreme joy when others get to have their raw experience.
We have a question in the chat, and the question is, how much intuition had to come into this for you? Because some of it is, a lot of it is just, it's intuition and discovery, I would imagine.
It's that child I was talking about. The intuition was me welcoming little LaTreice into the situation. I think when we grow up and we are taught from school how to perform, how to be successful, what to do. And some of that robs us of that intuition, that internal knowing of what we want and what we need for ourselves. And nature forces us into that. Someone asked me the other day, do I only go on trails that I know? And I said, no, sometimes I'll go to a place that I have never been before to strengthen that intuition. When I first went into nature, I did not hear well. I could not hear the things that I was seeing. And what I mean, I couldn't see the things that I was hearing. So I would hear a rustle in the bush, but I couldn't find it. I didn't know what it was. But the more that I went, the more I noticed I was being a little loud in the woods. Every motion that I make is making sound. So I had to get still to notice these nuances, these sounds. Now, when I go outside, I don't just hear birds, I can hear them at distance. It's amazing to me. But it's a practice. It's continuing to do something so consistently that it teaches you lessons that you didn't even know you were coming to learn. And so I still am strengthening it all the time.
Staying on that, related to that topic of intuition, and this is a tough one, and this is another question that was in the chat, and it has to do with the meds and making a decision. And that has to be a terrifying decision. I know it would be for most people. How did you come to that place where you decided, I'm going to do this? A lot of people wouldn't.
I was desperate. I did not come to this after going to a couple sessions with a therapist and just say, I don't like this therapist. No, I had been to several. I had been institutionalized several times. This had been something I was dealing with my entire life. I have been dealing with emotional. There's things that my mother would tell me that my sister would say about me even as a little girl. And she would say, Mom, just let LaTreice, give her a second. She just needs to get herself together. My mental health was always struggling. And I was so dependent on those meds that if I forgot to take them, I thought that was the reason I had a bad day. And that if I took them, then I would have a good day. Knowing that I was not calibrating, keep needing to be calibrated, was messing with my self-esteem, my self-image. I felt terrible. And I think by the time many of the clients that I have come to me for a raw consultation, they're desperate too. They've already gone to the doctor and they see the blood work. They've gotten the test run and they still don't know what's wrong with them. And this, like, what is wrong with me is what got me that desperate to know that I can't hear myself. I don't trust my thoughts. I don't trust my choices. I'm asking a therapist to help me make decisions and I need to make them for myself. So I got desperate. I think by the time you go to the woods by yourself and as a woman, it's because you got desperate. And I just wanted to change. And what I encourage people to do, what you have been doing, and therapy is important, therapists are important, but if what you have been doing has not been working for you, choose differently. And I was willing to choose differently. But don't do it alone. Make sure that you communicate to people, have support around you, assess your environment. This is not something that I did alone. I had my family support. I made sure that my sisters knew, my good friends knew, so that when I still today, I still have issues, I still have episodes, but I communicate as best I can about them so that the people in my life are also empowered to participate in my care.
Now, sort of related because it's a safety issue.
Mhm.
This is an issue of physical safety, and you had alluded to it earlier. We had a question in chat about, what do you recommend to deal with the anxiety of walking in the woods or walking in nature alone, especially as a woman, as a Black woman?
Mhm.
How do you help people deal with that anxiety? What advice?
One of the practices that I did with some children. It was a pair of twins, both girls. And in nature, you're going to always have challenges. And one of the challenges that we had to face right away was they had to walk across a beam. And they wanted to go across the beam holding each other's hands because they were twins. Makes sense. And I told them they were not allowed to do that. And they were like, what? So one of the twins was like, fine, I don't need you. I'm gonna go across the beam and live my best life. And the other twin's like, how could you leave me? You're a twin, we're the same. But no, you're two different people. And that one twin could go across. And I told the other twin, you still gotta make it across, but you're gonna have to go a different way. And she said, but how? I said, you're gonna have to go down this hill and across that creek. And I'll show you how to do it, but you're gonna have to get across. And I believe that you can do it. That young girl got down that hill, walked under that creek, and got to the other side. And what I think is important for us as Black women is to be encouraged and empowered to walk alone. And yes, it is a scary thing. Yes, there are dangers, but that is where that internal knowing comes. I always tell women, don't go with earphones. Keep yourself very alert to your surroundings at all times. When I first started to go to the trail, I would always let at least one person know that I was going and to which trail I was going to. So I would just send a map or on iPhone, send a pin. I also make sure that I remember that these spaces are mine. Our ancestors walked to their freedom. There was not a bus to get to freedom. You had to get to freedom through the water and through the woods, and women were leading that charge. With whatever fear that we had, whatever pain that we had, whatever things that could discourage us, we overcame it. And so it's encouraging ourselves that we are overcomers. If most women look back over our lives, you've overcome far more already than those woods got for you. Those woods only have nothing but love for you. And everything there is there for you. And so when you go out there in that knowing, say hello to the trees, welcome yourself to those rocks and streams, and walk with your head held high, your chest up like you belong there. And won't nothing happen but good.
What is our responsibility as a community, and especially in the environmental community, and especially when you have curated, so to speak, nature areas? So for example, here at Nature Forward at Woodend Sanctuary, we have a beautiful 40-acre sanctuary, and we have an accessible trail.
Mhm.
What is our responsibility as a society to make sure that nature spaces are accessible as possible,
Yeah.
and as safe as possible?
We have a great responsibility to make sure that these spaces are safe because everyone needs them and everybody needs them, and everybody's body is unique. So some trails need to be paved for certain people's needs. I have needs that may feel more comfortable on a paved trail, but my emotional and psychological needs need the dirt and soil. And so I also want to encourage places to not only pave everything, but to also be aware that what is most important to us to receive the energy that we need out there is to be connected to the actual earth. So if there are flat spaces that you can go to where there's just grass, go there. Sometimes there are parking lots where you could just be in the grass. If you want to get to areas that may seem dangerous to your body, ask for help. I think having people there that can be helpful as guides to people that need physical support and even emotional support could be very helpful in natural spaces. And I also saw in the chat that someone asked, what were the three parts of this? And so it's rest, assess, and work. Rest, assess, and work.
The raw method, we had a question in the chat also. Is it something that you can teach other people to teach other people?
So I'm in the process of developing the raw courses now. The last 5 years of raw has been me defining what this is, knowing what it is, and only recently began even sharing it with other people over the past 2 years. So this has been a part of a personal practice before I ever made it available to other people. And I still am very much protective of my own rest in this work. So as I have to have limited computer time and work, this development process is still in the works, but I am going to be making the raw method available for those who want to learn for themselves personally, but also for those that want to use it as a teaching tool. And thank you for the person for asking that. And you can learn about that by just staying in tune with LaTreiceBranson.com. And my name is LaTreice Branson.com.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask, how people could learn more and stay in touch with you. The last question I have, and I've asked this of all our presenters, and you certainly alluded to this and very overtly talked about it in your presentation, but I just want to leave people with what belonging means to you.
Belonging to me, it means being free. It means being free in all that you are and standing in it and being rooted. That's when you know that you belong, when you are rooted, like the tree that is planted by the water. I shall not be moved. And that's what it means to belong to me.
LaTreice, thank you so much. I mean, it's, again, we met virtually before and we talked a few times setting up your appearance here. It's just delightful that this day has finally come and we've had a chance to hear your message today. And looking forward to seeing you in person tomorrow and you sharing a live performance with us.
Yes, I look forward to seeing everyone there. We're going to have a good time. We're going to rest. We're going to assess, and we're going to do some work, but it's going to be a good amount of fun.
LaTreice, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. God bless.